Alright, welcome back to Klein in Class to the Lemoyne Center. Today we're going to be talking about one of my personal favorite. Alright, let's talk about language shift. Shift. Meanings change slightly over time. Now, what's interesting here is to study how those language shifts happen. Bird. The word bird in the older English, which was actually closer to German, fun fact. You see, how it works is that people in England actually began as like a Germanic tribe, and then they got invaded by the Normans and the Saxons, and then their language kind of got spliced in, and they were invaded by the French, and then they had some Bible stuff come in, so, you know, Greek and Latin started to infuse their beliefs and their thought processes in there, and then they got invaded by the French, like, again. They got a little bit of Celtic mixed in, just a little sauce in there. And now we're getting infusions of Spanish and Chinese, and basically, there is a particularly rude way of referring to the history of the English language, but suffice to say, it more or less accounts for, it's just a weird history, that's all there is to it. Now, it used to be Brid, actually, which is another thing that happens is, we change our enunciation around a little bit. It depends upon situation and finance and things like that, but basically it went from saying Brid to bird. Brid actually used to mean a young avian, so like a hatchling or a chick. And now it's come to mean something more along the lines of just a creature in flight that has feathers. Or actually, it doesn't have to have feathers. It's any avian. It's a feathered, warm-blooded creature that lays eggs. Now, let's talk about one of the more interesting issues, which is language shift. Specifically, pejorative and amelioration. Now, a pejorative you probably have heard thrown around a little bit. Sounds like prejudice, right? That's what it is. So when something is hit with a pejorative, it means that it is hit with a negative connotation. Ameliorate is when the opposite happens. So, like Amelia being about love. Ameliorate means it's got a more positive connotations. Now, you can probably already figure out how this goes. You know, I was reading a book the other day, and it mentioned someone going to eat out at a Trump restaurant. At the time, a Trump restaurant was simply defined by its money. But now, within the internet community, it carries different connotations that are politically heavy. I don't want to get into it. I'm just saying it changes based on circumstances like someone becoming elected president that you didn't expect. So, you know, it's interesting to see how that stuff changes over time. The word witch, you know, if you think of a mental image of a witch, it didn't actually begin as a woman. It began as any person with mystical power about them. And once more, we're talking about English, so it would be a practitioner, either male or female, as a witch. So, you know, I could be considered a witch if I practiced magic. So, the problem is that women outlive men, and when it came to practitioners of these mystic arts, older women made a little bit more. There are lots of theories about how this happened. A lot of it has to do with like finances. So, you know, a woman's husband passes, she can't work the field as hard as he does, so she makes homemade remedies. And if you talk about like old wives' tales, if you think about him, there's probably some conventional knowledge there. So, you know, your baby has a cough, you go see, you know, the witch up on the hill, and she says, just give him a little bit of, just rub some whiskey on his gums, it'll be great. Okay, does it work? Well, I mean, I'm not an expert, but the point is that it came to mean a woman with magical power. This is where the church gets involved. Once more, I have nothing against religious practices. I'm not trying to be mean here, or either religiously or politically, but the church got involved. And their attitude on the situation was, you gotta go to Jesus for healing. That witch on the hill is evil. Satan! Okay. They've got their reasons, and actually if you trace the history of some of their beliefs, that goes back way, 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 way before the Roman Empire was even founded. So yeah, they've got some reason to be understandably concerned. I mean, you know, you grab a rat's tail and you head out under a full moon and you anoint yourself with this special oil water and you chant something. Does anything happen? Well, I don't think so. I'm not knocking anybody else's belief. I'm just saying, you know, I can understand why the local priest would say that's malarkey. Then again, you know, it's not like he can actually, you know, solve, you know, terminal cancer either. I'm just saying, you know, I mean, they start an attack against these individuals. They decry them as evil, servants of Satan, etc. Not a pleasant time to be had. So they became evil. Now, something that's evil is often mischaracterized as monstrous in humans. Whenever you look at, I hate to bring it up, but forms of racism, the Nazis, the Klan, etc., okay, you'll notice that when they depict other races, they will not just exaggerate parts of bodies, which is just kind of grotesque, they will ascribe ugliness and monstrousness to them. Okay. Why? It's a psychological thing, I think. So how it works is that if I tell you, oh, you should fear, you should fear those North Dakotans. You're like, well, why? And then I show you this picture and they got fangs, they got claws, they got a nose pointed like a spear, and they got these fierce slitted eyes. Yeah, those North Dakotans seem pretty scary now. Then you actually meet one and they're not nearly that frightening. I met a couple, they're okay. Okay? The point is, then they go from just being evil to being something ugly. Sometimes, the reason I'm saying that this is a little bit vague is that people kind of have this idea in their heads of what a witch is, what a witch looks like. When it comes to an actual witch hunt, you're not really hunting witches. You know? It's kind of a weird thought, but I think it's important because this is how language works. You think, well, gee, they're targeting women. Not really. They're not targeting women, they're not targeting mystics, they're just targeting random people, which is actually the real problem of a witch hunt. You're not actually hunting evil monsters that can, I kid you not, claimed they could shoot venom from their eyes, which is actually kind of cool if you think about it. Alright, back to the lesson here. So, you've got this evilness, and then, because something's evil and scary, of course we're gonna put it into fairy tale books where evil witches scare people. And that, in turn, goes from being in fairy tale books into being movies, like The Wizard of Oz, or Sleeping Beauty. There's an evil witch. Well, here's the thing, though. When it goes into pop culture, somebody sees this evil, ugly monster and thinks, wow, that's awesome. I want that. I want to shoot fire from my hands. I want claws. I want the fangs. I want the slitted eyes. Which, I mean, I wouldn't want permanently, but I can understand the draw. So now it became a pop culture thing. And now witches are symbols of power and of virulence and interest. And then that reignited interest in a Wiccan religion. So, you know, they want to reconnect with the original mysticism that you had back here. Peoples of magic. So, in a way, we went through all these things where you got, you had cultural issues where women were trying to make money. Then you had the church coming in and doing their religion thing. And then they started a media campaign, but then that media campaign ended up creating basically what was at the time popular entertainment, which in turn turns into popular culture, which then in turn goes right back to what it was in the first place. So that's how shift works. So it shifted in that it became a smaller meaning. You just eliminated the fact that this was talking to men. Then it became about women. Then it went through a pejorative. Then it went through an amelioration. And then it went into an amelioration shift back into Wiccan, or pejorative, depending upon how you define this last one. But basically that's how language shift works. Okay, the word silly I was going to point out because it's actually got a similarly interesting history, and then I'll summarize on this no rules point here. Okay, so the word silly, soliloquy, is simply a throwback to wood carvings. Here's how that works. Okay, so you carve something out, that would be a silly. Okay, it's simply an image, it's an idol. However, the church comes in, once more. I got no beef against the church, okay? I got a lot of Christian friends. Churches are nice. They're cool. And they started making all these rules against idols, but you could make a carving of a saint or of a, like the Virgin Mary, or you could do Jesus. Okay, so you don't actually go out of business if you're an idol carver. You just shift your business a little bit. So then it went from simply meaning carving to meaning a holy object. So you would say this is my silly, but it's a carving of Jesus, so you can't just say it's just an idol. It becomes takes on the word holiness. And as these images start to proliferate throughout the church, that's what ends up coming up. This eventually gets applied to people. So, as you would say, well, these are silly images. It comes to mean holiness, so then you say they're holy people. Those silly girls over there, well, they're very holy girls. They're not, running around town, starting the business, okay? So then it came to mean chaste. Silly people are not people that indulge themselves. They're not driven by their carnal desires. But then people view holy people as naive and in turn dumb. Of course, because you don't go drinking, you don't know what a bar's like. So you're not really holy, you're just dumb and naive. So went through a naive and quickly into a dumb thing, into meaning silly. Because a dumb person is actually a funny person. So you'd say, well, that's a silly person over there, they're naive, they're dumb. And then you laugh at them, which you shouldn't, but it happens. Okay, then it comes to mean that this is something that makes us laugh. So then we say it's a silly comedy. Even though all the way back here, it just meant a carving. And that's how language shift works. Sometimes it goes pejorative and it becomes an insult. Sometimes it goes through amelioration and becomes something of a compliment. And sometimes it just shifts. You can't control it. No rules. You cannot control it. You can barely guide it. The reason I bring this up is that lately I've seen a lot of people trying to control language. Well, we'll change the meaning of the word special. Good luck. Okay? You can't control people's perceptions. It'd be really nice if silly people who don't, really start a lot of fights, who try to keep a serious mind about themselves, let's be spiritual, sure, why not, we're viewed as wise. But a lot of times people view them as dumb, and that's just how people are. You can't really control the way they talk, because you can't control the way they think. What you can do is you can monitor it. That's the first thing. The second thing here is that you have to allow language room to breathe. Yeah, there's some words where, you can't just write them off. Like, if I called you a dum-dum, and I'm not, but if somebody calls you a dum-dum, you know what that word means because it's kind of obvious. On the other hand, there are no rules. Eventually, if enough people are called dum-dums, it doesn't mean anything. And this is where I want to be very careful about the words you use against people or for people. You might think that you're talking in a positive way, but I've seen this in my own lifetime. 2 words, stunning and brave. When I was very young, that someone was stunning was an incredible compliment. To say that someone was brave meant something. And now, the vast majority of time I see people using those terms, especially together, it's an insult! Because you can't control how people think. So, be careful about how you apply these languages. Here's my challenge to you. Without using vulgarity, because for some reason vulgar words like, okay, they actually don't shift too much. Like, I was speaking to a professor about it one time, and he can trace some of these modern day slang terms that are really crude back to a millennia. People are already using them. Like the Crusades, they write this stuff on the wall like it's graffiti. Why? But, so not vulgarity, but I'd like to hear you try and take a word like printer or carpenter or any word that you find interesting, like garage or moist. soliloquy, effigy, constant. See if you can't shift the word in the comments. I'll give you a guideline. Try and make it an adjective, so a word that describes a human being. Like, oh, he's a pale fellow. He's a skinny fellow. He's a tall fellow. See if you can't maybe change it to, maybe not a pejorative, because, come on, play nice. But, like, see if you can ameliorate. See if you can make it mean something nicer than it is. My best friend is a tall fellow. Or shift it, one of the most common modern examples of this is the word gay. There was a point where some millionaire heiress just sat down and wrote up a story. Of course, she's ridiculously rich, so rules don't apply. And all she did was just write the word gay, like every fifth word. It was just they were very gay together, and they were gay, and they had a gay home and a gay life. And that's how it came to mean homosexual. Because someone just sat down and just wrote out over and over and over, and that's how it meant, from happy into a sexual identity. Alright, so that's your challenge for the day. I hope that all things go well for you. Try it in the comments below and see if it works. And hey, comment off each other. See if, that tall fellow is a great friend, or if you just shift the word to meaning something else.